Today we're going to be talking about the influence of messages. So you might have seen that GIF at the top today with all those messages increasing on the rise, and that's kind of what we're going to be talking about, how you get so many messages a day that you might not even think about and how they influence your life. So the most important discovery you can make in life is who you are. The most important people in your life are those people who help you discover who you are. And the most important thing you can do for other people is to help them discover who they are. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So in today's discovery, it's pretty much going to be based around who you truly are, who you think you are, and how you come to know who you are. So what type of influences help you realize who you really are. So first we have to talk about the social mirror and the power of the social mirror. So things that influence the social mirror are anything outside of you. So your family, your relatives, your friends and classmates, what school you go to, what church you go to, any organizations or extracurricular activities that you partake in. Really all those things are your social mirror, and that reflects back to you an image of who you are. So through those reflections, they come to you as messages. So all of these things are making up your social mirror, and it's a reflection back to you of who you are. So you are a message center. Okay, so every day you get thousands of messages. Some are important, some are trivial, some aren't so important. But the most important ones are the ones dealing with who others think you are or want to be. Okay, so I'm going to read that again. The most important messages are ones dealing with who others think you are or who you want to be. And some of these messages are obvious and some are not. So sometimes you might have to decode a certain message. Sometimes it might not make sense right away. But the most important ones that you get are the ones dealing with who others think you are or who you want to be. So what's the power of these messages? Well, they have influence. So if the most important message has to do with who you are, who you want to be, that's going to influence how you think about yourself and how you think about your surroundings. So again, messages have influence. They influence what you think about and how you think. So think about how many messages you get a day, regardless of what they're about. They're going to be about a million different things. Think about how they make you think or how they influence you. So for example, you're too sensitive. I'm glad you're my friend. You're a good student. You never do anything right. What you're wearing has been out of style for 3 months. You're too young. You have great self-discipline. You'll never be a part of the cool group. All of those different messages probably make you feel a different way. Okay, and all these different people can be telling you all these different messages. Everyone is going to have their own opinions. Everyone's going to have a different thought of who you are. So how do those messages influence who you're going to be? So we relate this back to the top 20s that we've talked about. The top 20s are good at interpreting true messages as true and false messages as false. So for example, if someone tells you you're too sensitive and you're a top 20 and you know that's not true, you know that's false, you're going to interpret it as false. But if you're in the bottom 80s and someone tells you you're too sensitive, although that's false, you might not be able to determine that that's false. Okay, and a definition that we want you to know is inform. So once a message gets in you, it tends to form you. So we need to be able to determine which messages we should be letting get in us because we know that that's going to form us. All right, so the validity interpretation of these messages. This chart is important and you'll need to know this for your homework. Okay, so there's 4 possibilities when you receive a message. If you receive a false message but interpret it as true, you are now believing what is false. If you receive a true message and interpret it as false, you are now believing what is false. If you receive a true message and interpret it as true, you are now believing what is true. And if you receive a false message but interpret it as false, you are now believing what is true. So it might be a lot to handle. Go back and read that through one more time, and it will make sense. True messages that become your beliefs will help you develop your potential. So we're going to relate this to a burning match. If you hang on to false messages for too long, they can burn you or hurt you. All right, so think about holding a match. It's going to get hot at some point, right? So you have to drop it at some point. So these dangerous messages should be dropped so they don't burn you or hurt you in the long run. So for an example, we're going to go through a quick story here. So Clark is a very talented and highly successful 40-year-old man. He is respected by his colleagues for his honesty, kindness, contributions he makes to the company. People like working and socializing with Clark, but Clark is unhappy and never finds satisfaction in his work or relationships. He feels inadequate. Why is that? Well, false messages. As a high schooler, Clark worked as a carpenter with his father. No matter how hard Clark tried, his father constantly criticized his work. The board was never cut right or nailed straight enough to satisfy his father. Even if someone else was responsible for the work his father was unhappy with, Clark would often be the one who was blamed. Usually the father's criticism came when the other workers were present. So, can you tell that Clark has hung on to the burning match and false beliefs that he's inadequate for too long? So, although he has coworkers who love his work now and appreciate his contribution, he's unable to let go of the influence that his father had on him when he was in high school. If he could change his interpretation of those false messages and see them to be false, he'd be able to thrive in the good messages and all the true things that his coworkers are now telling him. So again, top 20s are able to recognize and hang on to those true messages. So influence, the power of teen culture. Influence is a subtle but awesome power that changes the action or thinking of another person. So when you think about teen culture, think about watching TV, all the things that you see on there that are influencing the way that teens act. All right, some things are cool. Sometimes it's telling you things are not cool. Whatever that influence is, it's out there. So the top 20s are very aware of these questions regarding teen culture. So what do they have me wearing, eating, or drinking? What do they have me doing or saying? What do they have me thinking or feeling? Where do they have me going? And what do they have me becoming? So again, top 20s are very aware of these things and the power that teen culture has on their influence. The bottom 80s, not so much. They can fall into wearing something just because that's what's cool, right? So think about, are you aware of these things when you see them happening? Or do you just go with the flow because that is what that teen culture has influenced you to do? All right, so then there's also peer influence. Top 20s have awareness when there's influence on them and the direction it's taking them. So again, they're aware that they're not controlled by their peers and they have the ability to be free and responsible to make their own choices. Bottom 80s do not feel responsible enough to make their own choices and they often go with the flow of what their peers are doing. Top 20s know that sometimes their peers are taking them in a direction they don't want to go and are able to get out and go their own way. And then there's media influence, which is, I think, larger now than it ever has been. And this is where the bottom 80s are highly, highly influenced by their peers and their media. The top 20s filter the truth and the teen culture messages. They're not likely to be influenced in ways that are contrary to their best interests, their true selves, positive relationships, and good health. So when we compare the messages of the truth versus messages of teen culture, here are some things that you'd be hearing. All right, messages of truth. You're wonderful. You belong and are accepted. Just be yourself, be real, let your outside reflect your inside. Now, some messages of teen culture that you'd probably hear. You're a loser, you're not good enough, you'll never belong. Pretend to be who you are. Pretend so that you aren't who you are. Cover up your inside and do anything to make your outside look better. So hang on to the messages that give you life. Let go of the messages that are harmful. So again, there are those examples. Make sure you're hanging on to the ones of truth and not the ones that teen culture are sending you. So for today's assignment, you're going to download the PDF titled Influence of Messages Worksheet. It's a 2-page worksheet based off today's lesson. So you should have all the answers for it after listening to this and turn it in by midnight tonight.